Daniel spent an entire Sunday afternoon watching videos about drop shipping, then crypto trading, then affiliate marketing, then real estate wholesaling, closing his laptop 4 hours later having learned about 5 different paths to wealth and taken action on exactly none of them. He wasn't lazy. He was stuck in a specific, well-documented stage that has almost nothing to do with motivation and almost everything to do with structure. This video walks through 5 stages that tend to show up in order on the way to genuine financial independence. And by the end, you'll likely recognize exactly which one you're standing in right now. My name is Emory, and if you've ever felt paralyzed by the sheer number of ways people claim you can build wealth, unsure which one is actually worth your time, then this video should help you locate yourself honestly within a realistic framework. And if that's useful to you, sticking around and subscribing helps this channel keep breaking down wealth building without the hype that usually surrounds it. Most people think getting rich is primarily about finding the right opportunity, the right stock, the right side hustle, the right moment to start. They're mostly wrong, and the reason matters because research and observation of how people actually build wealth points to a different bottleneck entirely. Not which specific path someone picks, but which stage of a fairly predictable sequence they are currently stuck in, regardless of the path. The first stage is best described as scattered exploration. This is where someone genuinely wants to build wealth, consumes a large amount of information about different methods, and switches between them frequently without committing to any single one long enough to see whether it works. This isn't a character flaw, it's a rational response to genuine uncertainty. Nobody wants to spend 2 years on the wrong strategy. But the honest mechanism here is that almost every viable wealth-building method, a skill-based side business, consistent investing, a specific trade or craft, takes long enough to show results that switching every few months guarantees none of them ever get the time required to actually work. The cost of this stage isn't wasted effort, it's wasted time, which in a compounding-based system is the one resource that can never be recovered later at the same value. Someone might reasonably ask how long is long enough before concluding a specific approach isn't working, since staying too long in a bad strategy carries its own cost. It's a fair question, and the honest answer depends on the mechanism involved. A skill-based business typically needs 12 to 18 months of consistent effort before its trajectory becomes genuinely clear, while a long-term investing approach needs years, not months, to be judged fairly at all, since short-term market movement says almost nothing about whether the underlying strategy is sound. The distinction that matters isn't a fixed timeline, it's whether someone can articulate a specific, measurable signal that would indicate the approach isn't working, rather than simply feeling discouraged and moving to something new. The second stage is focused commitment, the point where someone picks a single, specific direction and commits enough time and attention to actually learn whether it works. This doesn't require abandoning every other interest in life, a common misconception that turns commitment into something closer to obsession. It requires treating one specific income or wealth-building strategy as the primary financial project for a defined period, while other reasonable life priorities, relationships, health, other interests, continue normally alongside it. The mechanism here is straightforward. Skill development and business growth both follow a learning curve that requires sustained repetition to move past, and splitting attention across 5 different projects simultaneously means none of them individually get enough repetition to progress meaningfully. Here's where this gets genuinely interesting, because the third stage, which might be called guided practice, is where the difference between slow progress and meaningful progress usually gets decided. This is the stage where someone is actively working on their chosen path, gaining real experience, but crucially, seeking out specific, structured feedback rather than working in isolation. This connects to a well-documented principle in skill acquisition research. Deliberate practice with targeted feedback produces meaningfully faster improvement than the same number of hours spent practicing without it. Someone building a specific skill, a trade, a service business, a craft, benefits enormously from finding people already several steps ahead and studying their specific approach, not to copy them exactly, but to shortcut past mistakes that would otherwise take years of unguided trial and error to discover independently. Someone might reasonably ask where to actually find this kind of guidance without access to insider communities or expensive mentorship programs. It's a fair concern, and the honest answer is that meaningful guidance is more accessible than it often feels. Professional communities related to a specific skill, industry associations, even direct, respectful outreach to someone a few years ahead in a similar path tend to be far more available than most people assume, particularly because most experienced people remember struggling with exactly the same uncertainty and are often willing to share specific, practical advice. The fourth stage is sustained execution, the often unglamorous middle period where someone has a working approach and a source of feedback, And the primary requirement becomes simply continuing to show up consistently while the compounding effects of skill development, and if applicable, financial compounding, slowly build. This stage tends to be the longest and the least discussed because it produces the fewest dramatic moments worth talking about. It's also the stage where the earlier reframe about time in the market versus timing the market applies just as directly to skill and business development as it does to investing. Consistent execution over years tends to outperform sporadic bursts of intense effort followed by long gaps, even when the total hours invested are similar. Someone might reasonably ask what happens to social relationships during this stage, since sustained focus on a specific goal often means less time available for the same social activities as before. It's worth being honest about this rather than glossing over it. Some degree of temporary distance from people pursuing different priorities is a common, realistic experience during a period of focused execution, not because those relationships become less valuable, but because time and attention are genuinely finite. This is worth naming honestly rather than romanticizing as a necessary sacrifice. It's simply a trade-off, and it tends to ease once the sustained execution stage produces stable results and more flexible time becomes available again. The fifth and final stage is compounding independence, the point where income, whether from a business, a skill, or long-term investments, has grown enough to provide genuine financial flexibility rather than requiring active trading of time for every dollar earned. This is the stage most people picture when they imagine getting rich, but the honest, less discussed part of this stage is the decision that follows immediately after reaching it. What happens to the money once it starts arriving in meaningful amounts? Someone who reaches this stage and increases spending in direct proportion to increased income experiences something that looks like wealth, but behaves financially more like an elevated version of the earlier stages. Since nothing about the underlying gap between income and spending, the actual engine of long-term wealth, has changed. Someone might reasonably ask why this distinction matters if someone has genuinely earned the ability to spend more freely at this stage. So if the actual question is which of these 5 stages someone is currently in, the honest answer usually reveals itself through one simple test. Scattered exploration looks like consuming information about several different approaches without sustained action on any single one. Focused commitment looks like consistent effort on one specific direction. Guided practice looks like that same effort paired with structured feedback rather than isolated trial and error. The math doesn't reward moving through these stages quickly, and it doesn't punish someone for taking longer at any particular one either. It simply rewards eventually committing to a single stage long enough to actually move through it, rather than restarting from the beginning every time uncertainty resurfaces.